Hello, thank you so much for clicking on this video. Quick reminder up top that I do have some of these prompts available as prints in my Etsy shop. That link will be below. And as always, thank you, my beautiful, wonderful patrons. Love you big. All right, let's get into the video. Hello, and welcome to the Spider Lair. I'm Spider, of course, and on this channel, we like to take a prompt and then make a character based off the prompt. And y'all are not gonna believe this, but I got a guest. I know. Just contain your excitement.
What?
You're like, I'm leaving. No.
Oh God, I'm out of here.
Yeah, sorry. What I meant to say was a super special guest. My favorite guest of all time. Best person in the world. 10-foot vertical leap. Has broken every world record. With us today, we have the multi-talented ClockworkFish, or Fish for short. Say hello.
Hi, that's me.
And then our prompt this time was a Salamander Shopkeep. And then before we dive too far into that, I'd like to reiterate our pronouns. Mine are they, them. What are yours, Fish?
He.
He, him, his?
Yeah.
Okay.
typical dude pronouns.
Yeah. Sweet. Yeah, so we've got the dude guy, and pronouns are dude and guy.
Yeah.
So, you may have noticed that we kind of got something different going on here. Yeah, Fish, I don't know if you know this, but normally on this channel I like to go digital. And
Wait,
this is a little different, right? There's my silly little hands doing traditional. And boy, what a time I had. It was a journey. So, I don't have a camera. I just used my phone. And I just ran into possibly every problem you could run into while doing this. Everything from I had to sit in a weird position to do it, which messed up my back, to my iPhone storage was full, to this footage was corrupted when I pulled it into my video maker. So I could only take little pieces of it. Anything that recorded over half an hour, I just didn't know what to do with it. So if I worked more than a half an hour at a time, that footage is not in here past the half-hour mark.
Oh,
like,
God.
Oddly enough, this didn't take super long. I think it was only collectively like maybe 3 hours. So quicker than a digital thing. I feel like with traditional, there is less opportunity to infinitely edit something. You have to just go with what you've put there and you can't go back. So without the undo function, I work even faster. Just laying down colors and just going with what I see. Very similar to painting. These are alcohol markers. These are Copics. Definitely my favorite traditional medium. And boy, what a time. I think for Christmas, I'm going to ask for like someone in my family maybe for an actual camera instead of doing the iPhone. They save them as a weird file. I can't even bring photos from my iPhone into this video maker. I don't know if it's the video maker because it's free or what it is. But anyway, you might be asking yourself at home, why did I continue to do this if very early on in the process I was running into every problem? And that, my friends, brings me to a topic I wanted to address, which is I am an adult who has ADHD. And part of ADHD is, I know, who would have thunk? Huh, interesting. Fish wouldn't know anything about that. No.
Oh, definitely not. Definitely not.
So, as Fish can probably attest, you get into this mode called hyperfixation, where you cannot let something go. If you have an idea, you want to see it all the way through, and you have, for normal tasks that don't give you a lot of dopamine, like filling out a form, making a 5-minute phone call, brushing your teeth for some people, ADHDers have a hard time doing any of those things. We just can't muster up the motivation to do something that isn't going to give our brain a lot of immediate dopamine, like immediate results. And so when you're hyperfixating, you are getting a constant rush of dopamine. It is just making all the chemicals rush and gush through your body. You get adrenaline, you get motivated, you have tunnel vision, and nobody can stop you.
Yep.
So for about a week, even though this drawing only maybe took 3 hours collectively, for about a week, I went back and forth trying to make this work. Just at every step that gave me a hurdle, I could not be stopped. I needed to push on. And was it worth it? know.
Well, you
I
tried
guess you tell
something,
me.
you
Yeah.
know?
I learned some things. That was fun. I learned what not to do. I learned that don't draw on your bed because it's a weird way to sit. Also, trying to position your camera and also draw over it. I don't know how people do it. I didn't like do any research on a setup or anything like that. I had a weird kind of Rube Goldberg holding up my phone to position it in this way, and I had to keep setting it up that way every time I came back to do it since I didn't do it all at once. So I don't know if you just saw there was a huge jump between that whole bottom half not being colored and now it's magically colored. So
I mean, you just use the instant color marker, right?
yeah, that's what I did. You just do like
Yeah.
one swipe across the whole thing and it just colors it the color you want. That's how Photoshop works, right? You just like press the shading button and it just shades the piece for you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's a color palette button on the side, and everything just works out.
Yeah,
Great.
it picks the colors for you. Basically, all you do is you just drag your pen across the screen, and then it's just
like
done.
those,
And Photoshop does
like
all of
those
it for you.
TikTok videos.
Did I tell you I had a friend who legitimately thought that? I told you that story, right?
No.
Okay, this person was like, "Oh yeah, like where's the shading button?" I was like, "The what?" And they were like, "Well, yeah, you know how your digital art is always like shaded. How do you get that to apply on there?" I was like, "You draw it with your hands? What are you talking about?" They legitimately thought that Photoshop did the lighting for me on a 2-dimensional surface.
Jesus.
I'm like, I think you might be thinking of a 3D program, maybe. All I can say is I'm very thankful for my art community. I am so glad I have art friends now. I didn't for the longest time, and it was basically just like being in a bubble alone with nobody to talk to about your art stuff, which surprisingly enough makes you stagnate and not get any better because you have nobody critiquing you or telling you what would make your piece work better, because people who don't draw are amazed by anything that is drawn. They don't see what could improve it. They can't critique it. They're just like, wow, that's incredible. So they just tell you it's good and you're just like, okay, I guess it's good. Why am I getting no likes on Instagram? How come I'm not working at a game studio if I'm so good?
What's going on?
So in the past couple of years, my art has excelled because of this reason. And I wouldn't have been able to draw something like this traditionally if I didn't understand some of the basics that I have learned by having an art community and talking to art friends.
Yeah, I want to take a second here and say, hot damn, this is looking good.
Thank you. Yeah, I was surprised how well it showed up on camera for all of the problems I was having.
Yeah.
I'm very happy with that.
With cell shading, like if you're doing the stuff that you're doing here, like you got to really knock out those lines and have them tight and like looking real good, making sure that all the gesture is nice and happy on all the lines. And
it was so hard with the camera set up like that. Like what's funny about this is that this is terrible. Like to me, this is embarrassingly bad line work. It's so wiggly.
Really?
Like hate it. Yeah, because I didn't have a view of it. I could barely see it. I could barely hold my pencil. Like it was a really strange angle to draw it, but I needed people to be able to see it while I drew it. Otherwise it was pointless. That's what I mean, is that I just kept running into stuff like that. Where I was like, okay, the setup's bad. Any normal, sane person would have stopped when they were like, hey, I can't actually see the line work that I'm doing. But I just figured that maybe all those people that do that have a similar setup to me, and they just deal with it.
Yeah, or they strap a GoPro to their head.
I think that might be what's happening. But no, here's the thing. That would be so wiggly. Because you're moving your head around and stuff. Like, you need, like, a stationary... you need a tripod pointing down at your setup that never moves. And and consistent lighting... Okay, so another reason that I took away the first 2 sketches is because I could not figure out how to keep the lighting consistent, because these were all done during different times of the day, and the lighting had to stay the same. So,
you gotta have like your own room specifically for all this video stuff. You know?
And that's why I was like, well, I'm gonna be in my room, and the only place to really sit in my room is the bed. I don't have like a desk in here. Those are my sheets.
Or what you could do is you could just get a big old cardboard box and duct tape your phone in a certain position so that it like stays duct taped there, or your camera whenever you get that. So you just like have that rigidly mounted and it stays put, and then you have lights that are also like rigidly mounted in there. So anytime that you want to start one of these traditional pieces, You just put the cardboard box over your sketch pad. You fit your little head in the cardboard box, and you just go to town.
Easy.
Yeah, I mean it's just like it's a studio that you just weasel your head up into, and then you're good to go.
You were saying something serious, and I was really like captivated. I didn't realize that was gonna be a joke. I'm sorry.
No, I'm dead serious. You
You're
should
serious?
totally do that.
No, Fish. You can't stick your
Yeah.
head in a box and draw. How would you think that would
Dude,
be any more
no.
comfortable than what I did? What are you
Well, okay,
talking
so
about?
you just get a bigger box. You get a really big box, get some
Poke
good
your head
quality
inside?
lights. Yeah, well, I mean, like, if you get good quality lights in there,
And then
I
you
don't
can
see.
hotbox your head and you can just heat up and sweat on your drawing. And then 5
Well,
minutes in, you're
hey,
going to want to die.
hey, if it's too hot, you know what duct tape fixes? Duct tape. You can also duct tape in a fan.
Jesus Christ.
Put some little air vents in there. You're good to go.
There's my little friend. You know, they're at their shop. I went with an indoor piece, doing an interior, and it's
Yeah,
funny because I was going to do an exterior. I was going to do a cart, and I'm glad I didn't because you and I didn't show each other these till we were done, and you did a
yeah.
cart in yours,
Hmm.
and I. We also made our salamander the same color, like the vendor. Like, so it could. I
Yeah,
kind of think it could be the same person.
yeah.
Like
I
that's
think it
very
is. It's just this is just different seasons.
Yeah,
Different
yeah.
seasons that they
This
work.
is during the spring where they work at the poison counter, and
Yeah.
during the during the summer they work at the hot dog stand sort of thing. So so
Oh,
Fish,
hey, this is
I noticed that you also did something that you don't normally do for your prompts, which was interesting. Let's talk about that. What possessed you to use a brand new program?
well. So I was thinking about using Blender. I didn't actually go through with it or anything,
Oh, I
but
see.
um, I really wanted to, and I
Mhm.
was trying to, and then the program was fighting me back because I've used it once or twice before just to lay out some cubes,
Mhm.
and that's a very complex thing. And surprisingly, building a hot dog stand is a lot more complex than just putting down a cube.
Really
So,
interesting.
yeah. So here's me opening up Blender, trying to figure out what buttons to press, clicking on things, trying to go like, okay, well, this is not working. Let's just go wild with this initial drawing that I had.
So,
So
so you did what
sat
I should have
down,
done. Yeah.
yeah, sat down and laid out that whole hot dog stand thingy.
Mhm.
Tried to really, you know, do the whole perspective thing correctly. Trying to do a lot more of that lately. And here is me just trying to struggle and figure out what the hell this little salamander guy is doing.
Mhm.
It's like my constant battle in art is just trying to figure out how to pose people.
Yeah.
So I ended up on this one, which I'm pretty okay with. And I was thinking of like, yeah, he's like a little hot dog guy. He's got to
Mhm.
be smoking, like in middle of New York City or something like that. Kind of like that first little salamander, but it was a little bit too bloopy for what I was going for.
I
So
love
I ended
watching
up
the
sticking
second
with
one
this
getting
little
laid
guy.
in like that. Like I just think you nailed it. I love the pose on the second
Yeah,
one and the swoop motion. His little
yeah,
geometry is cute. And I love his little it's like a big salamander bouncer. There okay, yours has so many details that are so good. There's like the bouncer that's like huge compared to all the other salamanders, and they're all waiting in line to get into the club, and um eventually you render out like little sodas that are sitting in the ice in front of
yeah.
the
Well,
customer, which I
because
love.
and even here, I'm like thinking through, like, okay, so there's a shelf here. There's got to be like a light underneath it.
Mhm.
So I'm like plopping in the light, and there I'm like, okay, well, that little shelf thingy is on hinges, but how are those hinges actually going to collapse? Because right now they're air pistons, but they should be hinges like I just drew in,
Mhm.
because an air piston is just going to go like, just going to compress and not like change location at all. So I had to like think through how would that little shelf thingy actually close up. And so I'm thinking, as I'm laying in stuff here, I'm like, okay, how is the sheet metal going to form around this cart? And
Jeez.
threw in like some little sheet metal texture there. Threw in some little, it's got like a little kitchen back there. So what's in the kitchen? He's got like, receipts for what orders are up. He's got like a little bin for grabbing all sorts of fixins and whatnot. A little welded on pole holder thingy for the umbrella. Some little venti guys for whatever kind of, probably like a little generator in there or something like that. And yeah, so laying in the umbrella. But yeah, I've been trying to like actually sit down and really think out, like, okay, what is the world that this character is in, and like what are all the things that they need in order to like actually have this world work. So instead of just like, hey, there's this guy in there and he's, selling hot dogs, I'm like, okay, yeah, but where is he going after this? Like, how is he going to break down his cart, and how is that cart going to move on to the next location?
God, you put so much thought into this. See, this is why I draw a lot of organic things, because it's like I don't want to think about like how machinery works. And I definitely do that same thing where I'm like, oh, what's this character? I'm thinking more insular, like inside, like what's their motivations? It's not the other thing. And I think that's why I don't find posing hard at all. But it looks like you make it look so easy to just lay down like, oh, well, this hinge wouldn't be a piston and I don't know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? And it's just Greek to me, and it's just so fascinating that we're like I feel like we're at two ends of the spectrum as far as like what's intuitive to us to draw, and like what we're thinking about while we're doing it.
Yeah, and I mean, like in my day job, this is something that I've never really tried before, but I wanted to give it a shot, which is just to lay down a whole bunch of flat color and then go in and airbrush out like light sources.
Yeah.
I've never tried doing it that way, and I think I liked it. I'm not sure. Made some things complicated, made other things easier.
Yeah,
we'll see if I do it again.
About that. He says that you like lay in an overlay layer just to the basics to like remind yourself of the light source and where things are generally going to be warmer or cooler. And then from there you can work off of painting it, but it's just nice to have it laid down so that you, if anything, just remember what way the light's facing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I was using that as like that's my underpainting, which I think kind of brought me into some weird issues, just because I couldn't wrap my head around certain things.
Yeah, I probably would have used it as its own lighting layer just in the future. But I mean, I think it turned out great.
Yeah.
But it sounds like the journey to get there wasn't fun.
Yeah. Well, it was a learning experience.
Right.
That's
what I'm chalking this whole thing up to. That's what I've been telling myself the entire time I've run into every problem, almost a little too optimistically. I was like, well, it's a learning experience. I only wasted a week of my life. Who cares?
Yeah, it's fine. It's all good. But yeah, let's see. There I'm laying out some more lighting stuff. Oh yeah, that's the other thing I was gonna say. During my full-time job, for the past like decade, I've been doing like prototype fabrication, and I'm kind of like somewhere in between a machinist and a mechanical engineer. So people are like, hey, I need a thing. And I'm like, okay, cool. Let me build that for you. Or they're like, hey, I have this thing that I designed. Can you make it? And I'm like, yeah, okay.
Wow.
And then I go make it.
Easy.
So that's why I'm like, oh yeah, all this mechanical structure. yeah, it's easy peasy. I mean, if you do it for like a decade.
How would you make this? You're like, what do you mean? That'd be easy.
Yeah, pretty much.
It reminds me of how my grandpa is always impressed at how I can do like 2D drawing, on a 2D surface. And
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he's like, oh, that's so impressive. So the other thing, I'm like, dude, you build chairs where there was not a chair. There is now a chair. It was raw material and then it was a chair. I don't know how you freaking do that. Like, what the heck?
Yeah. Well,
Just make
you
it.
know, duct tape.
Yeah, easy.
Yeah, it's easy peasy.
That's something I like
I
about your
mean, like,
personality in general is that like you are maybe I would say the most optimistic person I've ever met, and you don't seem to be too bogged down by the limitations of something. Not to say that once you get in there and get your hands in it, you don't, like in this case, back out when you're like, ah, that ain't working.
yeah, yeah,
The important step I feel like for you is tangibly getting in there. But
yeah.
I was just thinking about your sickle. Uh,
Yeah, it was like $15. I'm super stoked about it,
Yeah,
honestly.
that's awesome. Yeah, that's like not that I ever have an extra $15, but that still feels like it's in enough of a good price point that it would make sense. Yeah, it's astonishing when you
Yeah.
can find something of actually good quality for fairly reasonable.
I mean, I don't know if it's good quality per se,
It gets the
but
job done though.
it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets the job done.
That's what I like
That's
about
all I
simple
care
tools
about.
like that. Like it's hard to have a bad quality hammer, right? As long as it's hammering,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, like, as long as it hammers and as long as the hammer head doesn't fall off, then
Hmm.
it's, you're doing good.
Do you ever think about that weird like riddle, or not a riddle, but like one of those thinkers that's like if somebody replaces over time like the act like the
Yeah.
let's
Oh,
like the
yeah, yeah,
hammer gets bad at the top, like it becomes unattached, so you buy a new one or whatever, and now it's got the
yeah, yeah,
same handle but a different hammer head. But then eventually the handle breaks, and so you get a different, but the head is still good, so you put it on a different handle, and it's like, is that still the same hammer?
yeah, yeah. I know exactly what you're talking
Yeah.
about, and I still have no idea if it is or not.
I like applying that to. Can I tell you a weird thing that I think about that?
Sure.
I like applying that to how our bodies regenerate all of their cells completely, and it's a cycle that takes like 3-ish years for the longest part to catch up.
Hmm.
So I don't know if it's with everything, but supposedly like all your cells will eventually like start replacing themselves because cells die and new ones are made, with the life
Yeah, yeah,
cycle of it. And so it's like, are we still the same person if we have completely, like, we have a new layer of skin now? Let's say we buzzed our head and everything.
yeah,
That's your hair is new growth. Let's say you trimmed your nails and all you have left is new growth past a certain point, right? And your brain cells have, like, you have new brain cells that you didn't have before and then have lost the old ones. Stuff like that. But okay, usually my second thought when I think of, okay, there's this question and I'm trying to answer it in like an absolute yes or no. The meta thought
mhm.
that I always have with any question like that is it important to make that distinction? Like like my next thought is, why ask the question? What does it matter, And when I think about
Huh.
if all my cells have replaced themselves, am I still me? I think it's using a really rigid definition of what is and isn't me. Like it just depends on what your definition of you is, because you are a collection of all of your experiences put together, including what's happening now, what will happen in the future, what's already transpired. You're your current body, and you're also the memories that you have being in a different one. Even if you were to lose all your memories, you would still, you know, be you. Like it's just
Yeah.
you're
I mean,
changing, and change is just the natural way of things. Things change all the time and replace themselves and recycle themselves all the time. So technically, if you think about it, you've always been you, even when you were star stuff. Like
yeah.
you've just been changing the whole time, and you'll keep
So
doing
it's
that, and that
still
doesn't stop. Like that's more natural than trying to
okay.
make a stationary point.
Is Well, I think what you're trying to say is
Mm-hmm.
that the hammer is still the hammer.
I think it doesn't matter if the hammer is still the hammer, is what I mean. Like it doesn't,
Well, I mean,
you know what I mean?
like
Like
if
like why ask the question? Why does it matter? Because like at the end of the day, it's how you define your hammer. Like it's the label you've given it as your hammer that makes it your hammer, not like that it has all the same parts that it started with. So it
no, but
depends
I
on
mean,
how
like
you're
if you
defining
make
the me or the hammer. Like, does that make sense?
if yeah, well, I'm thinking like, okay, so if you're on the page of like, okay, you are always you, and you've always been you since you were stardust,
Right. You just
then
been changing.
using that same like metaphor
Mm-hmm.
and like applying it to the
Oh,
hammer is still
yeah.
the hammer.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
always been the hammer. It will always be the hammer. It's just always in a transitory state because there's no point at
Yeah.
which the hammer was stagnant. There were always molecules moving across it. There was always a slow rotting process starting. There was always a slow rust process starting, right? So even if those
Yeah, yeah.
things aren't, like that hammer is still the hammer in that it has connection to you, even though its parts were replaced because it has relevance
Yeah.
to something. You know what I mean? It's
And
there
and
somebody
and it's
was
also relative to itself.
yes. So like so your consciousness of it, just like your consciousness of yourself, extends to the hammer. Because now anything that you've interacted with is it's defined by how you've labeled it. So it's like that hammer is always in such a transitory state that why does it matter if it like technically it was never the same material twice because there were more atoms making up the degradation process like at some point than there were in the beginning. So like why
Hmm.
distinguish that? You know what I mean? Uh
Yeah,
video.
yeah. Yeah. So
That was the video.
that was a
Well, if you want to see me do more cool things and hopefully have Fish coming back on and doing more cool things, subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell, and you can find all my social media links down below if you'd like to see more. Fish, where can they find you and follow all the rad stuff you're
yeah.
into?
Yeah, it's just Instagram, and then that's ClockworkFish with a little underscore because somebody else took ClockworkFish that was not underscore.
Heresy.
Uh,
Blasphemy.
yeah,
Hang them by the neck.
bastard. Yeah, and I've also like actually built some stuff, and that's on up on Instructables
Mm-hmm.
as ClockworkFish. Um,
And
but
we
yeah,
can
just
link
kind of
that stuff
floating
down
around.
below too if you think of anything else.
Yep,
And
yep.
then in the meantime, I'm gonna go find the fake clockwork fish with the twirly mustache and assassinate them for you. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Please do.
Okay. All right. Well, that's all we got. Tell the nice folks goodbye.
Bye.